Obsession is the only movie I've ever left visibly shaking. The premise is simple and relatable. A young man makes a wish for his crush to fall madly in love with him. What follows is the most harrowing hour and a half of film I've ever seen. Every scene is so packed with tension and disturbing imagery. I haven't stopped thinking about it since I walked out of the theater. I guess you could say I have a fixation. I'm Curmudgeon, and today, I'll break down the story of Obsession, beat by beat, pointing out the hidden details you might have missed and sharing my own theories about the mysterious One Wish Willow and the film's haunting conclusion. Along the way, I'll dissect its most distressing scenes, highlighting the techniques Curry Barker uses to turn your psychology against you and create the most viscerally uncomfortable movie of the decade. This video will spoil Obsession in its entirety, so I highly recommend you watch it for yourself before continuing. I have a podcast. Last week, after working on it for several months in secret, I launched the first 3 episodes of Let's Split Up, a new show hosted by myself, Poltergeist, and King Newsme. In each episode, we walk you through a horror movie, uncovering its secrets and, most importantly, explaining how we would survive if we were a character in the film. So far, we've covered The Long Walk, the original Scream, and my favorite horror movie, Nope. Altogether, that's over 10 hours of semi-scripted content that you can watch right now, and we'll be releasing new episodes every other Friday. I hope you'll check out Let's Split Up with the link in the description, and let us know what you like and where you think we could improve. This is a very new sort of project for each of us, but we're all really excited to share it with you. Anyway, for now, let's unbox Obsession. The film opens with our protagonist, Bear Bailey. Bear Bailey is the devil. Right now, he's confessing his love to his best friend, Nikki Freeman. The girl sitting across the table from him takes his confession well, touched by his honesty. Unfortunately, this girl isn't Nikki. She's just his waitress, and this is just a practice run to help Bear summon some confidence. His friend Ian, who's been just out of frame, tells Bear that Nikki would hate such a sappy confession, and then she'll hate him. Instead, Ian tells Bear to tease her because girls like it when you're mean to them, suggesting he bring up an old nickname, Freaky Nikki. Any sane person will recognize that's a bad idea, but Bear has a better one. See, the guys get together with Nikki and another friend, Sarah, every week for trivia night at a local pub. Bear begs Ian not to show up just this once, and to get Sarah in on the plan. That way, he can be alone with Nikki and have the space to tell her how he feels. There's just one issue. Bear's true love may be Nikki, but Ian's is trivia night. Ian hates the plan. Bear has all the time in the world to make his move, so why does it have to be the one night that affects Ian? No, he wants to go to trivia night, so he's going to trivia night. And Bear just doesn't have the guts to tell him no.
Just as he also doesn't have it in him to tell Ian to be careful with that glass on the edge of the table, so close to being tipped over and having its contents spilled out, leaving it completely empty inside. Or worse, having it slip off and shatter on the floor into an unrecognizable pile that would need to be cleaned up quickly before someone else gets hurt.
This introduction elegantly establishes the language of obsession, desire, and control. Every scene is built around the tension of conflicting desires. Tension that is only resolved when one character does something to control another. Bear returns home defeated, only to find defeat in even greater measure. His cat, Sandy, is lying on the floor beside a puddle of puke. Not moving, not breathing. Somehow, she got into some of Bear's late grandmother's pills, a bottle of prescription pain meds on which Bear has written a message for himself. Don't eat. A reminder not to make a choice he can't undo. It's too late to try to save her. Bear is devastated, but there's no one else to clean up the mess. He pulls on a pair of rubber gloves and stuffs Sandy's body into a garbage bag and throws away the corpse. The remaining daylight is spent scrubbing crusty vomit out of the floor, and when night falls, Bear goes to bed to sob alone in the dark. He soothes his shaken nerves by cyber-stalking Nikki's Instagram, too sick with grief to do anything else. Bear is coming apart. In fact, that's the first thing he said during his faux confession at the diner. Bear doesn't seem to have any family, not since his grandmother recently died. Based on the medicine cabinet full of pills for Barbara Bailey and the sheer amount of oxycodone he has on hand, I gather that her death was long and painful, and there was no one but Bear to walk through those final days with her. After a protracted battle with some unnamed illness, she left Bear her house, and she left him all alone. Suddenly, the endless scroll of faces vanishes from his phone's screen, and an incoming call appears. It's Nikki. After taking a moment to compose himself, Bear answers.
"You're so lucky,"
Nikki begins, telling Bear about the minor inconveniences of her shift. It's okay, though. She's excited to see Bear, Ian, and Sarah for trivia. Bear admits that he's probably not going to trivia, but he can't bring himself to share the painful news about Sandy. Nikki does everything she can to convince Bear to go. She wanted to see him, but more importantly, she had something to tell him. As it turns out, she just put in her 2-week notice at the music store where she, Bear, and Ian work. After that, she'll be skipping town, getting a fresh start, and focusing on finishing her book. With only 2 weeks to voice years of unspoken affection, Bear caves and agrees to meet Nikki at the pub. Just before they hang up, however, Nikki's crystal necklace slips off her neck and down a drain. When she's unable to retrieve it, Bear hatches a new plan. He leaves immediately. He has some time before trivia begins, so he swings through a shop selling crystals and other New Age novelties. He plans to buy Nikki a new necklace to show her how well he knows her and how much he cares about her. And then, he'll finally tell her the truth. Problem is, Bear knows absolutely nothing about buying crystals. He evaluates the shop's options, but nothing seems to scream Nikki. Until something catches his eye. A display for a novelty toy called a One Wish Willow. The One Wish Willow is essentially a gag, like a Magic 8-ball or a Luigi board. The 1950 styles packaging claims the One Wish Willow can grant a single wish. All you have to do is open the box, break it in half, and speak your deepest desire. I wish that you would like and subscribe. Now you have to do it. Realizing that he has no clue what kind of crystal to get Nikki, Bear guesses that she might like the One Wish Willow at least as much as a necklace. And with such a bold promise at the low, low price of $6.99, how could he not? As he's checking out, the clerk warns him not to come back complaining. Apparently, the One Wish Willows are meant to be a collector's item, and the people who open them complain. Bear asks if it's because they're a scam and they don't actually work, or if they complain because it does work and it ruins their lives. The clerk rings him up, and Bear gets back on his way to trivia night. There, we finally meet Nikki and Sarah. Right away, things feel pretty awkward. Nikki is still complaining about work, and Sarah is talking about her difficulties getting into art school. Bear does his best to hide the fact that he's miserable, but the pressure is on to make the most of his time with Nikki. Bear follows Nikki to the bar to get shots for the table before trivia starts. Bear tries to open up about Sandy, but keeps getting interrupted. When they linger too long at the bar, Ian and Sarah come to collect them. Ian comes over, excited to share that he just learned that Sarah's dad, their boss, keeps a gun in the safe at work. Can you believe it? Finally, before they go back to their booth, Bear manages to tell Sarah that Sandy died, and she gives him a long, comforting hug. He wishes it was from Nikki. Everything we've seen so far establishes some clear issues between Bear and his friends. They're constantly interrupting him, ignoring him, or insisting he do what he doesn't want to. They make the minimum effort to include him, but not to know what's going on with him. They ask how he's doing, but they don't listen for an answer. Their kindness is superficial, but even superficial kindness is better than being alone, and they're the only people left in Bear's life. After much trivia and many drinks, Bear and the others emerge from Barker's pub, only for Ian to make the executive decision that they're all headed to karaoke. Nikki, however, is the only friend in the group with the power to veto Ian's plans. She wants to go home and sleep, and asks Ian to drop her off at home before running off to another bar. Bear, seeing his chance for some alone time with Nikki, steps in and offers her a ride. Ian doesn't like it, but he relents and sends Bear and Nikki on their way. "Get your girl home safe," he tells Bear, which Nikki seems to think is kind of a gross way of saying it. The friends part ways, and Bear and Nikki ride quietly along toward her house.
Don't let me forget. I got you something.
Ew, why am I nervous?
I don't know. That's an odd reaction. Bear starts to question even giving her the One Wish Willow. They chat about various things. Work troubles, Nikki's book, and Ian's insistence that they all drink so much. Nikki feels trapped in the life she's living right now. Or maybe stagnant. She needs a big change to be able to write the story she wants to write. She needs to get her head in the right place. She needs to feel love. Bear asks if she's writing a romance, but she denies it. It's not a romance. It's a love story. Bear can't see the difference. Nikki was originally supposed to elaborate on the difference, but her monologue was ultimately cut to meet the film's pacing goals. I'd like to include that monologue here because I think it adds to some of the story's themes. Excerpts from the script that I'm using come from a breakdown from the Screenplay Lab, a channel run by Curry's dad, Jeff Barker. I'll include a link to his breakdown in the description.
I don't think romance is real. I think love is real, but not romance. Romance makes life feel magical, like in movies. Then your parents split, or they're so miserable you wish they would. People start telling you, love fades. It's mirage. They're wrong. Romance fades. Love is a different thing. And that's what I want to write. The good, the bad, the ugly, real stuff.
Nikki isn't interested in the commodified promises of romantic movies and fairy tales with their happily ever after endings. Love isn't perfect. It's hard, and it's messy, and it's uncontrollable, but it's real. Nikki tells Bear that he's the only one she can talk to about stuff like this. He's probably her best friend, too. It's clear that she values him a lot, and he isn't entirely crazy for thinking he might have a shot with her. But when Bear and Nikki pull up at her house, she brings up Sarah. Bear says that he likes Sarah as a friend, but Nikki already guessed as much. Nikki claims that Sarah wears her heart on her sleeve, but when Nikki likes someone, no one can tell. Bear desperately wants to believe that she's talking about him. This scene is beautifully, suffocatingly awkward. As a viewer, you're constantly questioning how Nikki really feels about Bear, and I think she is too. Here's how I read Nikki's feelings in this scene. She likes Bear, and she's 90% sure that it's only as a friend. But that last 10% is haunting. Some part of her wonders if they could actually be good together. And between that and the alcohol, she can't help flipping between being vaguely flirty and genuinely heartbreaking. One moment, she's spilling her guts to Bear, telling him how much he means to her, and the next, she sounds disgusted by his advances. Ultimately, I don't think Nikki ever wanted to be with Bear, but she does want him to be happy. When she drops hints about Sarah, it's almost like she's offering up her friend's affections as a substitute. But unfortunately, Sarah was never the one Bear wanted. As if realizing she said too much, Nikki says a short goodbye and is suddenly in a hurry to leave. But Bear, terribly afraid of wasting what might be his last opportunity for honesty, tells her to wait. She looks back at him, visibly worried about what he's about to say. Bear begins his confession with a sappy story from high school, but Nikki cuts him off. Whatever the story meant to Bear, it never meant as much to Nikki. She starts walking to her house, but Bear calls to her one last time.
Night, Freaky Nikki.
Ew. Don't call me that.
Nikki can't believe that Bear would call her that. Not only is it hurtful, but it's also super unlike him. He laughs nervously and tries to play it off as a joke, but she doesn't care. She marches back to the car to peer at Bear through the window, and then she just asks him, straight up.
Bear, do you like me? Because if you do, now is the time to tell me.
Her face makes failure seem absolutely certain, and Bear can't imagine being honest. So he isn't. He lies. He tells her that he thinks they make really good friends, and that's the end of it. Nikki leaves, and Bear sits in silence, riddled with painful, swelling, tumorous regrets. One of those regrets is in the car, just behind him. Bear retrieves the One Wish Willow from his backpack, staring at the happy kids on its brightly colored box. He can't help but laugh at himself for buying such a stupid gift. He tears it open, and a speaker within plays an eerily happy jingle. He pulls out a small, strange stick and tosses the empty box behind him. Bear looks up at Nikki's front door, and then back down at the One Wish Willow. Why did he think she would even like this? He grips the toy firmly in two hands, and half as a joke, half as a sincere prayer, he snaps it in two.
I wish Nikki Freeman loved me more than anyone in the fucking world.
Bear throws the pieces of the willow into the back seat and turns to see Nikki, silhouetted by her porch light, watching him. After a moment, she comes tiptoeing back out to the car.
Didn't you say you had something for me?
Oh, I left it at my house.
Oh, okay.
Something is off about Nikki. She's acting confused, lost almost, despite standing just outside her house. Then it gets weirder. Despite how disastrously everything just went, she invites Bear to come inside. She wants him to spend the night. After all,
I did just lose my cat, Bear.
You lost your cat?
I mean, you lost your cat. I'm so sorry.
Bear tries to laugh it off, telling her to go back inside and get some sleep, but that causes her to start pouting like a child.
I know what you're trying to do. Fine. Let's go back to your place.
Nikki is starting to freak Bear out. I mean, she's acting really unlike herself. She snaps out of it for a moment and says that she must be really drunk. Then she starts sobbing, saying that her dad is dying of leukemia. Bear thought she kind of hated her dad. But, I mean, is it really best for her to be alone? Soon they're standing in his house. He's dreamed of this, of taking Nikki by the hand and leading her to his bed and... No, that isn't what's happening. The circumstances are all wrong. Nikki really isn't doing well, so Bear's just gonna sleep on the couch and...
Will you sleep with me?
Bear's desire for Nikki wins out against his desire to do what's best for her, and he agrees to stay, even as she starts undressing. He turns away, bewildered by the development, but not enough to stop her. He takes a seat on the bed beside her. She rests her head on his shoulder. And then she brings her face close to his. She looks deep into his eyes before closing her own and leaning in to kiss him. Bear knows he should stop her, but he doesn't want to. A disturbing blend of guilt and elation bubbles up inside of him as their lips meet for the first time, and a second, a third. Nikki's eyes snap open, full of fear. She screams and pulls away so forcefully that she almost tumbles off the bed. Bear is left hyperventilating from shock and passion, as Nikki quickly tries to reestablish control of herself and the situation. Whatever might have been happening, it's definitely over now. Nikki asks if they can just go to sleep, but Bear demands an explanation. Nikki says that she thought she saw something, or that she had a panic attack, or when she starts breaking down in front of Bear, he realizes that interrogating her won't help either of them. He tries to sleep on the floor at the foot of the bed, but his mind is just too full of questions. He gets up and goes to his computer, careful not to wake Nikki. He starts to do some research. Does a One Wish Willow actually work? Reports are mixed. Some say they work, and some are certain they're a scam, while others deny they've ever even existed. Having grown up in the internet horror community, the marginal text that Bear misses immediately caught my eye. This scene is packed with references to the Mandela effect, a phenomenon in which groups of people collectively misremember some detail of the world around them. It could be something small, altered spelling in a fictional character's name, maybe a missing element in a company's logo, or it could be larger, like a public figure who you swear died in the 80s actually being alive and well in the 2000s. Theories abound, but I believe the Mandela effect is referenced in Obsession because of its most unhinged yet interesting explanation: parallel universes. If you slipped into a parallel universe where almost everything was exactly the same, except for one mostly unnoticeable difference, you wouldn't notice the change until one day you find yourself thinking, the Monopoly Man definitely had a monocle, right? Then you're going down rabbit holes, seeing the evidence that no, he never had a monocle, and now you're either crazy or dumb, or maybe it's just the freaking Monopoly Man and you never actually looked that close at him, because why would you be looking that close at the Monopoly Man? But now that you are looking at him, you're starting to discover some things about yourself, and maybe that one friend was right and you kind of do have a thing for older men.
What were you doing?
She asks him to come back to sleep with her, and Bear is, honestly, at this point, I think, too scared to say no. He crawls into bed with her, but all night he just lies there, frozen as she embraces him until morning. He wakes up alone and rises to find his missing visitor. He checks the kitchen, but doesn't find Nikki. We, however, can see her darting unseen through the shadows of his house, out of Bear's sight. He, on the other hand, is too distracted by the breakfast on the kitchen table and, more importantly, by the feline corpse in the middle of his floor.
Aw, Bear, no. You were supposed to like it. It's a memorial.
Evidently, she found Sandy in the trash bag and decided Bear had given his pet an unfitting send-off. Flower petals are scattered around Sandy's body, but Bear doesn't find the gesture sweet or funny or whatever Nikki seems to think it is. It's nauseating. Seeing that her efforts aren't appreciated, Nikki picks up the cat to dispose of it, and we cut to Bear and Nikki walking into Castle's, the music store where they work, along with Ian and Sarah. Nikki takes her place at the cash register and watches as Bear tows Ian to the break room for a private conversation. Ian just assumes that they hooked up, but Bear denies it. He thinks Nikki is having some sort of major mental episode, and when Ian pushes for more details, Bear shares the news about her dad. He tells Ian that she slept over because she didn't want to be alone, but he lies about sleeping in the bed with her, and he neglects to mention the incident with Sandy earlier that morning. Most importantly, he doesn't say a word about the One Wish Willow. He still feels crazy for even considering that some stupid kid's toy might have caused any of this, especially when there are still other explanations on the table. Ian looks over Bear's shoulder to where Nikki is standing at the cash register. She's been staring at them for the entire conversation. He finally concludes that Nikki was probably on something, Molly most likely, so he decides to talk to her about it. Bear begs him not to make things awkward, but as usual, Ian does what he wants. We cut to closing, and as Nikki opens the door to Bear's car, he protests that he can't take her home that night. I know, I'm riding home with Ian, she says. It's more of that weird flip-flopping that we've seen from her. Now she's going from being totally transfixed on Bear to playing hard to get. In any case, Bear goes home and enjoys a bit of space to process the strangeness of the last 24 hours alone. Or at least, he tries to. As he's going about his business at home, we can see Nikki outside Bear's window before there's a knock at the door. Bear answers to find Nikki, all dolled up with nowhere to go. She apologizes for how she's been acting and confesses to being on MDMA. She knows she made some questionable choices that Nikki wouldn't have made on her own, and she wants to get some stuff into the open. She's about to tell him one thing when her face shifts, and suddenly it's like an entirely different person is standing on Bear's doorstep.
You know you like me, Bear.
The glint in Nikki's eyes in this shot highlights her features in a way that is just downright demonic. Bear is completely thrown off. He's not ready for another night like the last, but he can't stop his deepest hopes from seeking validation. She asks once more if Bear has feelings for her, and this time, Bear manages to tell the truth. After this, we get a montage of Bear and Nikki's blossoming romance. We see the new couple chilling on Nikki's bed, playing music, then they're making cringy AI pictures together, and awkwardly sneaking away to make out in the break room at work, before we finally come to a scene of them on a date at a fancy restaurant. They're reminiscing about old times together, about the day they met, in fact. One day in class, Bear had written that he wanted to be in a band when he grew up. The teacher thought that was ridiculous, but Nikki, who'd been sitting behind him, leaned over and whispered to Bear.
I'll be in your band.
That wish died a long time ago. Nikki realizes that she really doesn't know that much about Bear. Bear says that that's not entirely her fault. He's kind of private. He mentions that Nikki actually called him a closed book in the past. I can't help but wonder how much of that is Bear's personality and how much of it is just a result of his friends not listening to him. In an effort to get to know him better, she asks Bear what he wants to do with his life now. Obviously, he doesn't want to work in a music store serving snotty band kids for his whole life. He thinks about it for a second before jokingly answering, a food critic. Nikki laughs at him. Baron Bailey, a food critic? Bear's the type of dude who puts ketchup on his steak. This is but one of many signs that Bear is not a good person. The date is interrupted when Bear gets a call from Ian, the third since they sat down. He steps away to take the call, and Ian is kind of freaking out. He's trying not to be weird, but it was pretty hard for him to believe that Nikki fell for Bear so hard and so suddenly. He just doesn't think Nikki could possibly sincerely feel that way about Bear, especially since Sarah recently confided that Nikki told her she saw Bear as a brother. That's hardly the worst of it, however. Ian has been looking into Nikki's dad, and as it turns out, he's totally fine. He hasn't missed a day of work in weeks, and the hospital Nikki said he was at never even heard of him. Ian doesn't know why, but Nikki is definitely lying to Bear, and he's starting to worry about them. Nikki in particular. This is all just so unlike her.
It's like Nikki snapped into a different person.
Ian starts to tell Bear that he thinks they should take a break until Nikki can work all of this out. But Bear just hangs up the phone. He knows Ian is right. Something is terribly, terribly wrong. Nikki just isn't Nikki anymore. Bear goes back to the table and starts to ask Nikki a question, but she interrupts to give him a gift. She hands him a small box, and inside, he finds a crystal, a tiger's eye. It used to be Nikki's mom's, and then it was hers, but now it's Bear's. Nikki says it's supposed to give confidence and willpower, things Bear needs to become a food critic, and things he possesses in woefully short supply. Summoning courage from the stone, Bear looks Nikki in the eyes and asks if she really loves him. She does, she says. She doesn't think she could live without him. She says that she loves him more than anyone in the entire world. Bear can't deny it anymore. He wished exactly for her to love him more than anyone in the entire world. And that's exactly what happened. The wish worked. The willow branch made Nikki fall in love with him, but it broke her to do it. And now he's starting to realize that these few romantic weeks might not even be real. Bear breaks her gaze and looks down to the stone, rolling it in his hand. Nikki, does your dad really have cancer?
No.
Nikki shoots up from her seat.
No, don't do that!
An awkward hush passes through the restaurant. Bear asks her to sit down, but Nikki just glares down at him.
Why does it matter? I thought we were having a nice date.
We are, Bear promises. She calms down enough to sit, and she asks again.
Then why does it matter?
Bear gathers his thoughts. As we've already seen, when Bear is compelled to do something, he is helpless to do otherwise. He doesn't have it in him to walk away from Nikki at this moment, and not just because he's afraid of her making a scene. No, Bear starts to rationalize. If Nikki says she loves him, why does it matter if she's lying about her dad? This is all he's ever wanted. He doesn't want to believe that this isn't Nikki, so he doesn't. There's a smash cut back to Bear's house. He ignores the undeniable truth and embraces a predatory lie, savoring the intimate exploitation of Nikki's body. She seems pretty on board with it in the movie, but in the early script, Nikki has another episode of sudden awareness. She screams at Bear mid-session, obviously terrified, and they stop, but only for a moment. Then Nikki's back on Bear like nothing even happened, and he's completely unfazed. He's already given himself over to the lie that Nikki Freeman loves him, and he can't see himself turning back. In these moments of panic, we're seeing the old Nikki, the real Nikki, snap back into her own body, with only a few seconds to take in everything happening to her. Back in the car, just after Bear broke the One Wish Willow, its grip on her was weaker. She came in and out quickly, pushed from her flesh by something that genuinely loves Bear more than anyone in the entire world. It isn't Nikki, but it has her face, and it has her memories, and it's getting better at keeping her body under control. Bear rolls over, exhausted. Maybe some deep part of him is horrified with himself, but he pushes it down even deeper and falls asleep. At 3:32 a.m., he wakes up. Nikki is gone. He sits up in bed and looks around the room, but it's too dark to see anything. Did Nikki go
Go back to sleep.
Nikki shuffles forward, wearing nothing but Bear's bathrobe and a thick coat of shadows.
You're so cute when you sleep.
Bear asks Nikki to come back to bed, but she retreats back into the corner. The shadows thicken across her face, molding it into something almost human. Bear grows uneasy as her face contorts with grief.
I feel like you don't love me as much as I do.
Nikki tells Bear to go back to sleep, and kind of unbelievably, he actually tries to, only for Nikki to dart out of the room, then come running back in sideways, holding a vase of flowers in front of her face. The first time I watched this movie, I was like dead certain that when Nikki put down the vase, she was going to have like mangled her face somehow, but nope. She sets it down on the bedside table with a smile, and in a cheery voice, she says,
For Sandy, okay?
Bear is freaked out, but like I said, he's in too deep to have any thoughts of backing out now. He falls asleep, and when he wakes up, he notices that he's missing a chunk of hair. During the night, Nikki thought it would be a cute idea to just give him a little trim. Bear, however, doesn't think it's cute. He likes Nikki a lot, but that crosses a boundary even for him. Today is Nikki's day off, so Bear finds her relaxing on the living room couch, reading a book in her pajamas. He tells her not to cut his hair anymore, which seems to disappoint Nikki. She tries to make up for it by telling Bear that she packed him a lunch to take to work. He thanks her for it, but feels like she's getting kind of distracted from the problem at hand. Bear wants to establish lines that can't be crossed, but Nikki ignores him, going in for a kiss. Bear, unable to control himself, simply tells Nikki that he loves her and lets go of the issue. He stands and goes to head out the door for work, but stops in his tracks the moment he realizes what Nikki has done. We hold on Bear's expression of growing dread for a moment before the camera finally cuts to show us what he's seeing. During the night, Nikki coated the door to Bear's house with layers upon layers of duct tape. It's an almost childish, but nonetheless unsettling attempt to keep Bear from being able to leave. Naturally, that just makes Bear want to leave even more, so he begins to pry the door open, but it takes a lot of effort. Nikki tells him he could just stay home with her if he's having trouble with the door, but no, I don't think he's going to do that. Finally, he manages to get it open far enough to slip outside as Nikki says her goodbyes. We watch as Nikki delivers a forced, unnatural smile to Bear's back as he makes a hurried exit. She holds that smile for minutes and then for hours, not moving a single inch the entire time Bear is at work. The camera slowly pans down to follow a trickle of liquid spilling onto the floor. It's almost like, at this point, Nikki's existence is contingent on Bear's presence. Or maybe like an animal that pees from separation anxiety when its owner leaves. Tragically, this goober is all that she's living for now.
At work, Bear does his best to process the ongoing oddity of his situation. Feeling emotionally exhausted, Bear sits down for a lunch break. Sarah joins him as he cracks open Nikki's packed lunch. Inside is a sandwich and a pair of Polaroids. One, a picture of Bear, it's labeled "You," and the other, a picture of Nikki that's labeled "Not Me." Beneath the picture is a post-it note that reads,
For my little food critic.
The real Nikki, during one of her increasingly rare moments of lucidity, packed these pictures as a cry for help, a wish that Bear would realize what's happening to her. She doesn't know that Bear already knows what's going on. He just doesn't know what to do about it, or how to fix it, or if he even wants to. Sarah starts to ask about the odd additions to the lunchbox, but she's interrupted by her dad, the owner of the music store. He tells her that a letter has come in for her from one of the art schools that she's applied to. Bear takes a bite of his sandwich as Sarah and her dad read the letter. It isn't good news. Dejected, she slumps to the floor beside Bear. It wasn't her last chance. She still has Luther, the hardest school to get into. Sarah regrets not doing more in high school to set up her future. Perhaps thinking about those regrets leads her to consider what she's doing now that she might one day regret. Her head comes to rest on Bear's shoulder. Her nose scrunches up. Bear's sandwich smells kind of rank. She hops to her feet, snagging the post-it note from Bear's lunchbox. So what's the verdict on Cat? He asks. Bear has no idea what she's talking about because he didn't notice that Nikki wrote on the backside of the post-it. Horrible understanding dawns on him as he looks down at the unfamiliar meat in the sandwich, but no, that's not the problem. The problem is that deep down he knows the meat is the most familiar he has ever eaten.
Nikki's behavior has gone yet another step beyond what Bear could possibly, even in his most deluded moments, consider normal. At the end of his shift, Ian approaches and asks for a ride. Bear tries to object, but as usual, he does as Ian wishes. On their ride home, Bear asks why Ian didn't invite him to the party he was planning later that night. Ian says that it's kinda weird having him and Nikki there when she's obviously going through something. And, he knows Bear well enough to know that he isn't taking advantage of Nikki, but he asks Bear to consider what it looks like to other people that don't know him as well. Ian claims his main concern is that Bear and Nikki have some sort of unhealthy, codependent thing going on. He says, hey, sure, you can come over, But Nikki has to stay home. He even offers to tell Sarah not to come over so the party can just be a boys' night. If they're as healthy as Bear says, one boys' night shouldn't be an issue. Bear, having his own rising concerns about the relationship, agrees. He's finally going to put his foot down and do what he wants without magical means of control. He drops off Ian and pulls up in front of his house, already having second thoughts about what he just agreed to. Not only that, he's still reeling from the fact that Nikki butchered and cooked Sandy. He rehearses a reprimand in the car. "Nikki, you can't cook the cat." I'm very upset. The assertive words feel wrong in his mouth. Can he really speak to her like that? Bear grabs his backpack to head inside and hears the One Wish Willow's electronic jingle play within. He takes out the small box yet again to consider all the pain it's caused him. Oh, and Nikki, of course. Turning the box over in his hands, he realizes that he completely missed something vitally important. The manufacturer's information. The One Wish Willow is made by a company called Tabby Cat Curiosities. That's Tabi Cat, a reference to That's a Bad Idea, Curry and Cooper's YouTube channel where they posted all their projects prior to Obsession. The detail that stands out the most to Bear is the phone number on the back. Somehow that never came up in all his research on the One Wish Willow. He pulls out his phone and dials the number, hoping that this might finally be his opportunity to obtain some answers. The phone rings and rings again, and then, miraculously, someone actually picks up. The guy on the phone asks what Bear wants. Bear says that he wants to change his wish. The man on the phone asks,
You mean you want to cancel a wish?
No, Bear doesn't want to cancel it. He just wants to change it.
I'm sorry, we don't really do that.
If he can't alter the wish based on what he knows now, Bear changes his mind. He says, you know what? Yeah, I do want to cancel it. He hadn't known that the wish would work in the first place, and this was never the outcome he wanted, right? The man on the line says that Bear has a moral obligation to stay with Nikki, since he chose this for her. The One Wish Willow is simple, but it's powerful, and above all else, it's final. There is one thing he could do. See, if the person who made the wish dies, the effect of the wish will fade along with them. Nikki's only way out is for Bear to succumb to the demons he's been fighting for years. He asks one last question.
Is her love real?
Just because you chose it for her doesn't mean it isn't real.
Bear tries to clarify. He wants to know if the real Nikki really loves him, to which the man on the phone responds with the most haunting answer imaginable.
Do you want to talk to her?
What? Who? You want to talk to her? Who is that? Nikki.
This is one of my favorite scenes in the movie. The One Wish Willow is such an intriguing item. We get the sense that the Willow works within the bounds of these unstated, unbreakable rules. I have a theory that I'll share about that later, but for now, there's another fun bit about this scene I wanted to share. Anyone who's watched a few of Curry and Cooper's skits over on That's a Bad Idea will probably recognize Curry's voice on the phone right away. That's right. In this scene, Bear is actually talking to the director of the movie. And while I think that's ultimately just meant to be an Easter egg, I also really like taking this as a literal conversation between the character and the director, the voice that is directing the story. It's almost like Bear is begging for a happier conclusion to the story than where it's currently headed, but Curry is telling him,
Nah, bro, you've all got like way more suffering to do before all of this is over. Sorry, though.
Bear unlocks his front door, shaken by the call, and is greeted by Nikki, covered in just about every bodily fluid that you can think of. Okay, maybe not every. The moment Nikki lays eyes on him again, it's like her brain turns back on. The carpet is caked with human waste and vomit, and only now does Nikki realize her wretched state.
Oh, I'm disgusting. I'll shower.
The sounds of Nikki walking around are really gross. As Nikki shuffles into the shower, Bear tries half-heartedly to express his anger with Nikki for putting Sandy in his sandwich. He tells her how mad he is and says that she can't cook the cat. To which Nikki just responds,
Okay.
It's kind of an apology, so Bear takes the opportunity to tell Nikki that he's going to go hang out with Ian. She makes it very hard for Bear to say no, even when he explains that it's supposed to be a boys' night. That turns out to be a bad move, however. Sarah already mentioned the party to Nikki earlier in the week, and so now she thinks he's lying to her to try to get away from her. Bear tries to talk his way out of it and tries to say that he's still going to go alone, but Nikki does not take it well. We cut to the party at Ian's house, where Bear and Nikki are awkwardly mingling with other guests. Ian isn't happy about Bear showing up with Nikki, but it's not like he's about to kick them out. A bit into the night, the partiers play a drinking game. It's basically like, take a block from a Jenga tower, read the dare written on the bottom of your block, and if you're not willing to do it, you have to drink. Another player picks a block and reads his dare. It's an easy one. He just has to switch spots with another player. He picks Bear so that he can sit next to Nikki. Nikki protests, but that's just how the game is played. Next up is Nikki. She takes a block and reads the bottom, but not aloud. She looks around the room shyly before taking out her phone and beginning to tell a very uncomfortable story. This monologue is very gross, so instead of reading it, I'm just going to make my poor wife read it.
The air was charged by the distinct call of a night bird. His face was obscured, but I knew he was looking at my chest, each side stretching, recently matured to different sizes. Come lie with me, like the old woman taught us when we were children, I said. He closed the door and leaned against it. You're not my wife, Gretel, he said. I'm more than your wife. I'm your sister. Hansel flinched and reached for the door handle. I knew he would not leave this place. He would relent and choose to be inside me, like he had many nights before. If not, I would fillet his meaty forearm, roll it like a stick of licorice, and insert the flesh between my legs. Hansel is my soul, a love only the branch of a willow tree could conjure. Brother, you will be inside me tonight.
Wow, wasn't that just an awesome story? Thank you, Miss Crow, for saving me from having to read Icky Nikki's incestuous fantasies, but what does it really mean? It says a lot about Nikki and Bear's relationship. At the beginning of the movie, Bear learns from Ian, who heard from Sarah, that Nikki feels like Bear is a little brother to her. Someone she can talk to openly and not be judged. While Bear saw their relationship as more of an intimate one, and when he made the wish, that melded her feelings for him into one of love, or even obsession. So Nikki reads a poem from a new book she's been working on about Hansel and Gretel, a very well-known brother and sister, and morphs that relationship into an incestuous one, kind of like what Bear did to their relationship in her eyes. He has forced her to love him through the magic of a willow tree, which is literally stated in the last line of the poem. And this also proves that old Nikki is still in there battling to escape, but freaky Nikki has control over her. The poem even drops subtle hints comparing Bear to Hansel. Gretel beckons Hansel to come lay with her, aka have sex with her, and casually mentions that they are connected on a deeper level because they aren't just married to each other, they are blood related. I'm more than your wife, I'm your sister. And the thought of having sex with his sister makes Hansel search for an escape, but he doesn't actually want to leave. Almost like he wants to find a way to be with Gretel and not make it weird. And at this point in the movie, Bear is quite literally terrified of Nikki, and he wants to find a way to alter the wish so she isn't so weird anymore. Not remove the wish, alter it. But even though he is scared of her and doesn't like this version of Nikki, he still can't say no to her. He wants to be with her so badly that even though he is terrified of her, he gives in to her seduction every time, because even though he knows it's wrong, he did wish for this. This is his fault. Hansel and Gretel could also represent the two sides of Nikki. Hansel is the old side of Nikki, terrified and unable to control herself, while Gretel is freaky Nikki. She can't get enough of Bear. She wants to be near him all the time, touching him, feeling his warmth to the point where she contemplates doing horrible things to him just to feel him. Yeah. And if you want to add like your wife saying the line about her wrapping up his skin and shoving it inside of her, that would probably be a nice little touch, but I don't want to say that.
You have to wonder, is this passage something that the real Nikki wrote, or is it from Freaky Nikki? We can assume that it was written after the wish. We know that because of the line about the willow branch, but I think it's kind of like a fusion of them. Freaky Nikki's thoughts and actions are a twisted perversion of the real Nikki's memories, feelings, and personality. It's incredibly interesting to me that Freaky Nikki would even write something like this when it doesn't seem like she had any intention of ever sharing it with anyone. That suggests a private, internal reality at major contrast with the version of her that didn't even move when Bear left the house. I agree that this story relates back to Nikki's true feelings for Bear. I think that Nikki really did see him as a brother, and that Sarah was telling the truth about that. And this is how she probably would have felt about a relationship with him. You know, maybe she did have some feelings for him, but they were constantly at war with this almost familial closeness that they shared. Anyway, now everyone is uncomfortable, so they try to move on with the game in hopes that the mood might come back after whatever the heck that was. Next up is Bear's dare, and it's about to earn him a glare.
Kiss the person on your left.
Nobody says anything. Nikki is almost cartoonishly unhappy. She marches over to Sarah, stands behind her chair for a second, and I'm gonna be honest, I thought she was about to like snap her freaking neck or something. Thankfully, she just drags her chair away and positions herself to Bear's left. She and Bear kiss, and the dare is complete, and the game can continue. Or at least it would if Nikki didn't stand up to announce that
Everyone in this room will die, never feeling the strength of connection that I've felt with my bear.
Ian does his best to break the tension by offering everyone a round of Jell-O shots. However, as Nikki looks back at Bear, for one of the last times in the film, the real Nikki breaks through. She freaks out, backing away from Bear in abject horror, grabbing a beer bottle, shattering it, and screaming.
It's not me! It's not me!
It's just like when she and Bear first kissed. Then she mentioned thinking she saw something. I think that when the real Nikki regains control, she's able to see whatever it is that's been controlling her body. And based on her reaction, I can't even venture a guess as to how grotesque it must be. Nikki realizes that soon she won't be able to wrestle her autonomy away from the willow anymore, and she can't go back to wherever it is she goes when she isn't in control. As she starts to slip away once more, she makes a choice. She turns the broken bottle towards herself and plunges it into her face again and again. The party erupts into panic, but Bear is paralyzed by guilt, or fear, or simply self-pity. When he eventually takes Nikki to the hospital, she refuses to go inside. She doesn't want to leave him, and there's nothing the nurses can do if Nikki doesn't want to be treated. Soon, they're sitting across from each other at Bear's kitchen table. Bear doesn't want this anymore. He knows it can't go on, but he also can't bring himself to put an end to things. Nikki tries to comfort him, but he pulls away.
Why did you do this? Why did you act like that tonight? You're scaring everyone.
I know, I'm sorry. I know Sarah likes you.
That's... Do you like me?
Bear, I love you.
No. Do you like me? Is Nikki... Does Nikki like me?
Of course. I'm your freaky Nikki.
Oh, no. Don't say that. I want this to work so bad, but...
It can.
No. you want this to work, we need some space.
No!
It's normal for couples to need space. Just be normal.
I can be normal. I can.
I just want you to be Nikki.
I can be Nikki.
No,
I'll be anything you want me to be.
don't say that.
Anything you want me to be.
Nikki wouldn't
I
say
can
that.
be Nikki.
You're not being like Nikki.
I can be Nikki. I'm so sorry.
If only she could have played the part a little better. Bear could have ignored the gnawing truth at the back of his mind, but this isn't real. It's not real. The One Wish Willow gave him romance, but it couldn't give him love.
I love you in every reality.
I love you.
Bear backs away from Nikki, terrified. She says that she would never hurt him, then she almost pounces on him. It's obvious that Bear isn't safe here. He tells Nikki to take his bed for the night, that he'll sleep at Ian's and come back first thing in the morning, but Nikki ventures out of view and begins rummaging through kitchen drawers. When her shadow settles back into frame, she's holding a knife.
Well, if I have the bed to myself tonight, I'll lay there warm, till slowly I feel cold, like I've walked into a freezer. My hands will feel like they're full of sand, like when you lay on them wrong. That feeling will slowly spread across my entire body. You're still in my heart, but you're slipping. Any thought of pain or regret will slip away like a chemical switch. Even though it's quiet in the room, somehow it gets even quieter. It's not painful. You just let go of everything you once were, and then there's nothing. It's not darkness. No, sweetie. Darkness is a color. There's just nothing. Or you could stay.
Of Nikki's 3 monologues, this is by far the most interesting to me because I don't think it's delivered entirely by freaky Nikki. There's a subtle shift in her tone as she says, "It's not painful," where it stops sounding like a threat to end her own existence and starts to sound strangely comforting. I like to believe that at the end of the monologue, the real Nikki is coming through, almost as if to assure Bear that the right thing to do isn't so scary. If he were to take that step and break her spell, it wouldn't hurt. And she knows that there's much more for Bear to fear in life than death. I'm not sure if Bear detects the shift, or if he is just trying to keep Nikki from killing herself, but he decides to stay with her. He lies with her, awake, tangled in her arms. Before his phone dings, he carefully retrieves it from his nightstand. It's Sarah. She tells him to meet her at a nearby park, and doesn't take no for an answer. Bear tries to slip away, but Nikki calls out to him softly as he leaves the room.
Bear?
I'm just getting water.
Please kill me.
Freaky Nikki isn't awake, so Nikki makes a wish with her stolen tongue. She begs Bear for death. Quickly, quietly, while the willow's sway is weak, Nikki has made her desire known. But she's entirely at Bear's whims at this moment.
What would be so bad about being with me?
I've never been with you, Bear.
All the pieces have been laid out before him. He knows Nikki is suffering. Ian isn't telling him what to do, and he doesn't even have to kill himself. And with everything in his favor, Bear turns and walks away.
Bear, please, please, please.
We cut to the park as Bear arrives and knocks on the window of Sarah's van. He hops in, and she starts asking him about Nikki. He tells her the truth, that her dad is dying. Seriously, this freaking guy sits here and lies to Sarah's face. But not only does he lie, he actually expands on the untruth. He tells her that Nikki and her dad have grown closer and that she doesn't have any hard feelings toward him. More tragic than Bear lying to Sarah is her response. She recognizes that Nikki is going through it, but she doesn't like that Nikki is taking advantage of Bear. She genuinely believes that Bear is just a good person who's found himself in a bad situation. And while, no, I don't think that Bear would ever have chosen to be in this situation, it is a situation that he continues to entrench himself in. But would telling his friends have helped anything? Probably not. But it's cruel and cowardly not to even try. I don't think Bear is guilty for using the One Wish Willow. No sane person would expect freaking that thing to work. But every lie after that, that's when we see the real Bear. Sarah shifts the focus of the conversation from Nikki to herself. The other reason she called on Bear was because her letter from Luther finally arrived, and she didn't want to face her fate alone. With the letter between her trembling fingers, this was the biggest turning point of her entire life. Would her wish become reality, or would she need to keep an open mind about her future? First, however, she finally tells Bear the big secret. Ian and Nikki have been casually hooking up for years. Well, now we know why Ian wakes up rock hard for trivia night. Bear takes the news surprisingly well. I guess it goes to show how done he is with freaky Nikki. Sarah says that Ian is pretty sure that Nikki is dating Bear to get back at him for not taking their relationship more seriously, but I never detected that she had feelings for him at all. This is, to me, a major indicator that Ian's bad advice for Bear hasn't come from a place of ignorance, but malice. I don't know if he was ever trying to help Bear, or if he was trying to sabotage his chances with Nikki. It's totally in line with Ian's character to do whatever he can to influence his friends into doing what he wants, and it seems like what he wanted was Nikki, if only casually. Sarah doesn't think that Bear ever should have ended up with someone like Nikki. She says that he needs someone more chill, someone like Sarah. Sarah begins to say that they were supposed to kiss at the party when her window explodes. Nikki reaches in, her fingers digging into Sarah's scalp around a fistful of hair. With her other hand, she braces a brick against the steering wheel. Sarah's teeth crack against clay as Nikki drives her face down onto the brick. Once, twice, thrice. A crunching, cracking, sticking symphony fills the car as the poor girl's skull shatters, spattering Bear with her blood. Her nose is smeared away. Her eyes escape from obliterated sockets. By the time Nikki is satisfied, Sarah is unrecognizable. Her petrified lover is riding shotgun to a weeping mess of vacant gums and barren muscle. Bear tries not to look, and I'll be real, I try not to look too. I've watched this movie several times for this video, but with this scene, once was enough for me to never forget it. No matter how hard I try. The shadow out Sarah's window stands up and straightens her hair before realizing how badly she scared Bear. Nikki runs around the car to his side and opens the door to comfort him. She whispers in his ear, telling him that
This is all your fault. Sarah's your fault. You wanted this. You wished for this.
They drive Sarah's car back to Castle's Music and load her body into a trombone case. Bear doesn't say a word, but just does as Nikki tells him. Then, she just sends him on his way. It should be an incredibly big red flag to you that freaky Nikki wants space, but we won't know why for a couple more scenes. As the sun starts to rise, Bear sits alone in his car. holding a blood-stained letter from Luther College. He opens it. He has to know. No shot in this movie is more heartbreaking to me than this close-up of Sarah's acceptance letter. Bear just screams, angry at himself, at Nikki, at the One Wish Willow, angry at the pain inside him. He storms back into the store that sold him the One Wish Willow, only to find out that they've completely vanished. He asks where they went, but the shop's only employee responds,
What's the One Wish Willow?
Bear starts to have an existential crisis until the man continues.
Fucking with you, they're right here. Yeah.
Bear screams at the man, asking how he could sell something like this. But the man turns it back around on him. The box is covered in warnings, he says, which, yeah, it actually is. Grants one wish, once made, cannot be undone or repeated. No multiple attempts. Using additional One Wish Willows will not change or affect your other wishes. Only one wish per life per person. Consider long-term effects. Wishes are irreversible. Think carefully before wishing. Tabby Cat Curiosities is not responsible for wish misinterpretation. Use at your own risk. Users assume all responsibility for wish outcomes. Curry was actually pretty clear about his stick in a box being pretty dangerous. Bear just didn't read it. Bear looks in the mirror and recognizes that he can't blame anyone but himself. The man asks what he wished for, and Bear simply says, "She's obsessed with me." The man tells Bear that if someone else makes a contradictory wish, they might both cancel out. Barring that, well, there's always plan B. Bear buys every One Wish Willow left in the store and returns to his car. He tears one of the boxes open, removes the willow branch, and wishes for Nikki, only to love him as a friend. He tries with all his might to break it, but whatever magic makes the willow work also ensures that the one wish per life per person rule is upheld. With no other option, Bear races off to Ian's house. Ian starts to chew Bear out for not answering his phone, but cuts himself short when he notices the blood. Remember, last Ian knew Bear was taking Nikki to the hospital. Now he's showing up in a panic, covered in blood. Bear goes right into his pitch, probably one he rehearsed on the way over. He has to make sure that Ian's wish fixes this. All of it. Why's Sarah texting me, man? That throws Bear off his rhythm. She wants me to come over to your place. She keeps texting me over and over. Things are much worse than Bear expected. Nikki has plans for Ian, too. He tells Ian to stay away and tries to leave, but Ian demands answers. And of course, Ian gets what Ian wants. Finally, Bear tells Ian about the wish, and naturally, Ian doesn't freaking believe him. Bear begs him to wish it all away, begs him to just think about how weird Nikki has been acting. Ian snatches away the One Wish Willow, setting Bear on edge. He acts like Ian is waving around a loaded gun, and honestly, he might as well be after everything we've seen. Bear struggles to explain everything he's learned about the Willow and its odd rules as quickly as possible, but it sounds so unlikely, so childish. All Bear can really say is that it's real. It's real, and Ian needs to wish that Bear never made his wish. Then Ian can be with Nikki. I think if Bear hadn't said that last bit, Ian might actually have listened. But as Ian rips the willow branch carelessly from its packaging and Bear struggles to formulate precisely the right wording to unscrew his whole life,
I wish for $1 billion.
Bear falls to his knees beside a mountain of money. Ian doesn't even apologize. I mean, what does he have to apologize for? He's a billionaire now, baby. Problems are a thing of the past. We cut one last time to Bear's living room. There's still one last person who may be able to fix this. Nikki herself. Bear enters his home, calling for her, completely missing her in the shadowed corner of the room. He's too distracted by the shrine to their relationship. The shrine is hard to comprehend. A mess of memories, trash, and melted wax. Footage of Bear, secretly recorded while he slept, plays on the TV. The worst part, however, is Sarah's body in the kitchen. She's been scalped and stripped, but we can only come to understand why when Nikki finally emerges into the candlelight. She's copied Sarah's tattoos, and now she's wearing Sarah's dress and her hair.
I can be anything you want. So why? Why can't you love me?
Nikki slams a brick into her head with inhuman strength, disfiguring her face and becoming somehow even more uncanny. There's a knock at the door and we hear Ian shouting from outside. Nikki, stunned from her self-inflicted blow, shambles towards Bear. Ian keeps pounding, hearing the shouts from inside as Nikki corners Bear on the couch. The door flies open and Ian rushes inside just in time to catch a bullet from the gun Nikki stole from the safe at work. Nikki presses the gun to her own chin, threatening to end it, but she calms down when Bear screams that he loves her. She slumps to his side, covered in blood and surrounded by bodies.
I'm sorry for the theatrics, baby. I don't know why you do that. I love you. I'm gonna heal. I'm gonna be pretty again, and we'll be together forever and ever and ever.
Why'd you shake your head?
Bear stands and suggests that they freshen up, hoping to prevent things from escalating again. But when the One Wish Willow falls out of Bear's pocket and Nikki realizes what's happening, Bear escapes into the bathroom with the loaded revolver. I don't think I can show, any of this part of the movie. So I'll just say that, yet again, Bear's fear gets the better of him. Even with Nikki banging on the door behind him and everyone he ever loved dead in the house with him, he literally can't bring himself to pull the trigger. It's too messy, too loud. Nothing at all like the all-consuming quiet Nikki described the night before. Opening the medicine cabinet, Bear sets his eyes on the pills that have already caused him so much pain. That he could do. Bear sits on the edge of the tub and eats one. Outside, Nikki says that they can take some space. Just a little break, if that's what he needs. Bear tips the bottle back and swallows as many of the pills as he can. And then he just waits.
He can't do it. He forces his fingers to the back of his throat to make himself throw up the pills. But then we hear the sound of the One Wish Willow jingle coming from the living room. It's finally time for Freaky Nikki to make her wish.
Bear's eyes widen. His fingers fall from his mouth, and a look of ecstasy crosses his face. He leaves the bathroom to find Nikki, still smeared with blood, but looking happier than ever. Their romance can continue to blossom, and now, finally, Bear will love her as much as she loves him. They come together in one final embrace before Bear's body begins to give out on him. He sinks to the floor as Freaky Nikki starts to realize that her romantic fantasy is fading. She caresses Bear in his final moments before drawing the gun on herself once more. An instant before she can pull the trigger, Freaky Nikki is gone. Nikki comes back to herself completely, though perhaps broken in ways too deep to mend. She drops the gun, pushes Bear off her, and begins to wail as the camera pans down, 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 before coming to rest, inverted, back on the TV. The credits roll to the tune of Nikki's trauma, and the movie ends. Obsession is a movie that should be appreciated in layers, so let's start on the surface, examining the unique world this story is set in. It's just like our world, aside from one key difference: the One Wish Willow. At the end of the film, I'm left with two big questions. What is the One Wish Willow? And what exactly did it do to Nikki? Here's what we know for sure. Number one, the One Wish Willow works. Some people like the theory that the One Wish Willow did absolutely nothing, and that Bear was just like drugging Nikki. But that fails to explain the success of Ian's wish. Additionally, there are certainly points in the movie where Bear would have had Nikki go back to the way she was if that was in his power, such as when he tells the Tabby Cat Curiosities employee that he'd like to cancel the wish if he can't alter it. There's simply no other sufficient explanation. The One Wish Willow is real. It's not a gag or a toy. It's a powerful, magical object with the ability to change and ruin lives. 2. The One Wish Willow takes time to reach its full effect. Nikki didn't disappear all at once, and Ian's money didn't appear in one big chunk. In both instances, the One Wish Willow began with a smaller, immediate effect and steadily marched towards the wish's complete fulfillment. That actually matches something that we see on the back of the One Wish Willow box, where it says that you might need to wait up to 24 hours for the wish to be fulfilled. 3. You can wish for just about anything. There is a very short list of printed rules on the box about what you can and can't wish for. Wish limitations. Cannot grant wishes involving time manipulation, resurrection, immortality, or creating more One Wish Willows. This thing's not going to turn you into God. But you want someone dead? That's fine. You want everyone dead? Why not? The only thing that Tabby Cat Curiosities advises is that you think carefully before wishing. 4. Once a wish is made, it's permanent. The box is covered in warnings for a reason. No one but the wisher can cancel a wish, and there's only one way to do it. Which leads me to 5. If the wisher dies, so does the wish. The second Bear slips away for a chat with the man downstairs, Nikki immediately regains complete control over body and mind, and she pushes Bear off her like he's nothing. The wish is no more, which really surprised me considering how powerful this thing seems to be. Ultimately, I think there are two good theories about how the Willow works: the creation theory and the control theory. The creation theory is that at the moment of Bear's wish, Freaky Nikki came into being and began to push Nikki out of her own body. This new person has Nikki's memories and aspects of her personality, but without her true feelings and desires. Nikki was a real, complete person with the capacity for myriad connections and creativity. But Freaky Nikki is defined exclusively by her connection with Bear. The eventual horrors of obsession ensue because Freaky Nikki is not a complete person. She quite literally exists for someone else. She desires nothing besides Bear, and when he's gone, it's like she isn't even alive. As such, she constantly expresses concerns that he's angry at her, or that he doesn't really love her, or that he prefers Sarah. Bear conjured Freaky Nikki into being, so if he doesn't want her anymore, well, to her, that's a fate worse than death, and it's a fate she would do anything to avoid. She was made to love Bear, not to make him happy. To that end, any means are on the table. She lies to him, threatens him, and removes any pesky obstacles like concerned friends or romantic rivals, regardless of whether or not that's what Bear really wants. Whatever Freaky Nikki feels for Bear, she does truly feel it. It isn't like this is an act for his benefit. She's just as invested in the wish as he is, and in the same way. When Bear wished for Nikki to love him, the One Wish Willow used his definition of love. At the beginning of the movie, when he asked Nikki if love and romance were the same thing, he implicitly proves that his understanding of love is something less real. To him, love was something selfish and carnal, and that was exactly the kind of love the Willow conjured, the kind of love that Gretel shared with Hansel, the kind of love that goes well beyond codependency and becomes co-consumption, just two incomplete people cutting chunks off of one another to fill the emptiness inside them. The saddest part is that Nikki, the real Nikki, didn't feel complete at the beginning of the movie. That was why she was waiting to write her book. She knew that she hadn't felt real love yet, and she was just 2 weeks away from going out to search for it. The other theory I find to be strong is the control theory. The One Wish Willow offers a taste of omnipotence, but you don't get to peek behind the veil before you play God. The control theory is the idea that there is no distinction between Nikki and Freaky Nikki. There's only Nikki, Bear, and the One Wish Willow. Perhaps the Willow has a mind of its own, eager to please any who call on it. Or perhaps it simply carries out the wish as a matter of mechanism, like a train, unshakably settled upon predetermined tracks. Whatever this odd little branch is, it's incredibly powerful, and it always finds a way to make the wish work. There is no beating the One Wish Willow. You might be able to resist its influence for a time, but the Willow always wins. If the creation theory was a hijacking, the control theory is drunk driving. Nikki stays in the driver's seat, but her hands don't move like she wants them to. Words pour out of her mouth unprompted, words she doesn't really mean. She operates under the influence of the Willow, but it never throws her out of the vehicle entirely. This theory is more horrifying to me by far, because it suggests that Nikki is at least partially present in her body for every awful thing that happens over the course of the film. At least on the creation theory, while Freaky Nikki was gallivanting around in her body, real Nikki got to slip off to, like, hell or whatever. Sure, she pops back in every now and then, but at least there's some entity to suffer through the relationship with Bear. Nikki had to deal with the knowledge that her body was being used against her will, but she didn't necessarily have to deal with the experience. The control theory strips away even that minuscule comfort. Nikki's experiences may at times be dulled due to the Willow's influence, but it never ceases entirely. She remembers the feeling of Sarah's crunching skull, the deafening snap of the gun as she erased Ian from existence, and the light fading from Bear's eyes. The guilt does not rest on her shoulders, but the blood is on her hands. And you can hear her pain at that fact in the film's final moments. While both of these theories are popular, I personally prefer the creation theory, primarily because of what we see from the real Nikki during her moments of terrified lucidity. She's clearly seeing something, and I think that something is whatever Freaky Nikki actually looks like. Of course, it could also just be Bear, and she's just that horrified by a relationship with him. And, fair. In any case, the nail in the coffin for me is the Polaroid in Bear's lunchbox labeled "Not Me," and the conversation before Bear meets Sarah in the park. Opening that conversation, Nikki tells Bear she's asleep. Please, don't wake her up. These are pretty explicit references to another person, and honestly, I'm so thankful for that. I'm not saying that Nikki has it easy because some entity is stealing her body. Obviously, she sounds pretty upset about it. What I am saying is that Nikki survives in the end, and I'd like to hope that she stood a little further from the carnage as this story unfolded. A thorough analysis of Obsession would be incomplete without examining the techniques it uses to create the unique atmosphere of dread that has propelled it into the all-time horror Hall of Fame. Obsession is not your average horror movie. In part due to its narrative, and in part due to its budget, this movie cannot fall back on the same tactics that another movie might to generate fear. There are no horrific monsters or massive theatrical set pieces. This story really thrives in its groundedness and in its drama and in its humanity. And honestly, that's the key word I would use to describe Obsession: humanity. Obsession crafts horror with human evils. control, manipulation, cruelty, jealousy, selfishness, deceit, and violence. The story starts with a supernatural nudge, but it's the latent darkness of the human heart that drags the narrative down such a twisted spiral. The film's lower budget actually serves the narrative very well, since it must rely on the fundamentals of filmmaking: motion, expression, light, sound, to access its elements of horror. There are 3 particular examples of this that really stand out to me. When Nikki shows up on Bear's doorstep the night after the wish, we can hardly even see her. She's swallowed up by the night, backlit as she is. The important details that help us feel safe around other people are withheld from us. We can't see her face, so we have no idea what she's thinking or how she's feeling. We fall back on our hearing to help us, but it doesn't get us very far. Her voice lacks the natural lilt and inflection we expect from someone we're close with. She sounds lost, like she's searching for the perfect lie to get what she wants from this situation. Then there's that freaking glint in her eyes. Goodness, the lighting in this scene drives me freaking wild. It highlights her eyes just enough to show that she's looking right at Bear, never blinking, as though she couldn't bear to look away from her beloved, even for a moment. It makes for an incredibly tense scene. Like, at any moment, the mood could shift and something very bad could happen. We're given just enough information to keep us asking questions, making predictions, and constantly rethinking our expectations about where this film will go. The real mastery, however, is that no matter where you think the story will go by the end of this scene, you're wrong, and it's gonna go someplace worse than you ever imagined. Undoubtedly, the most outwardly disturbing scene in this movie is Sarah's murder. It's incredibly raw on a visual and emotional level. Even though I've watched this movie multiple times for this video now, I've never watched this scene again. However, the thing that I want to focus on is not the actual murder itself, but right after the murder. We see Nikki out the car window, and she's just the vaguest form of a person. Bear's evil in the shape of a woman. Contrast that with the sparkling glimmer of the park lights on every tiny trickling river of blood on Sarah's face. Both girls are painted equally inhuman, one by light and one by shadow. However, while no other scene in the movie bothers me so deeply as this one, I do think that one last scene exemplifies Curry's strength as a director more than any other in the film. The corner scene, when Nikki wakes to watch Bear sleep, demonstrates the deepest understanding of the uncanny valley I've ever seen in horror. Several long shots give us all the time we need and more to absorb the information on screen, because no edit can ever match the emotion that is achieved by simply watching a human look, sound, and act so wrong. Aside from makeup, there are no special effects making Indy Navarrete look this way. Just a series of shadows placed with infinite care to interrupt or exaggerate the familiar contours of the human face. Nikki herself isn't scary. She's an ordinary girl, but the unnatural way she moves, the way the shadows catch the creases of her twisted expressions, and her ever-shifting emotional state transforms her into something intuitively unsafe. If you've watched Curry Barker's short film, The Chair, you'll recognize some similarities. Both films thrive on what I would call emotionally uncanny behavior. We know how people's moods are supposed to shift, one into its neighbor, but these films subvert those expectations. Moods don't glide, they plummet and crash from one extreme to its polar opposite without warning. Most creators stray too far from the familiar in an attempt to tap into the uncanny valley, but Obsession crafts inhuman imagery using only human features. There are no impossibly twisted faces, no unnaturally wide smiles, and no freakishly altered proportions. Just ordinary people and all the dangers we pretend we aren't capable of. Some people walk into the theater expecting the titular obsession in this movie to be Nikki's, and leave believing the obsession is Bear's. Looking a little deeper, however, I think you'll find that every main character in this movie is obsessed with something. As I said earlier, Obsession's story is told through the language of desire and control. So, what does each character desire, and who do they try to control to get it? It's pretty weird to try to analyze Nikki as a character, because she has a ton of lines in the first 15 minutes of the film, and then after Freaky Nikki takes over, everything kind of just has to be inferred. Thankfully, she gives us a decent bit to work with during her ride home with Bear. Nikki's greatest desire is, I think, simply to do something with her life. I don't know that her book is necessarily the end goal. It's a stepping stone, just as art school is for Sarah. However, there's another step she has to take before the book. She needs to find genuine love. She's given up on finding it with Bear, and she sure as heck isn't getting it from Ian. At best, they might offer her romance, but she isn't interested in that. To pursue her desire, Nikki chooses to control her environment. She isn't going to try to change Ian or Bear to make them who she wishes they were. She's ready to sacrifice everything and everyone she's ever known to find something better, something real. Sarah's greatest desire throughout the movie is Bear. She's obsessed to the point that she just believes whatever lies he tells her. She never considers that he might be taking advantage of Nikki. In fact, she'd sooner conclude that Nikki is taking advantage of him. She wanted to believe that the boy she liked was a good guy deep down, regardless of what was happening with Nikki. Her willful ignorance of the truth ultimately led to her death, but even if freaking Nikki hadn't been a factor, I don't think there was any world where Sarah and Bear had a happy ending together. Sarah has another obsession, however. She spends most of the movie trying to find a way to get with Bear, but the rest of her time is spent trying to get into art school. What Sarah wants, she works for. She puts in plenty of work applying to art schools, trying to control herself to achieve a better future, but the problem is that she lacked that drive in high school. I can't help but wonder if that was because someone else was making decisions for her. After all, she, like Bear, seems to be in Ian's pocket. Oh, and speaking of Ian. Ian is the character who perplexed me the most after my first watch. He's the only character who seems not to have any plans for his future, and at first, I thought that made him feel a little flat. However, on my second watch, I realized that Ian is actually a fantastic foil to everyone else's ambitions, because Ian's desires never extend beyond his immediate situation. Let's go back to the very beginning of the movie, in the diner. Bear's practice confession was entirely Ian's idea, and literally all he does is shame Bear for how he feels. That starts to make a lot more sense once we learn that Ian has been sleeping with Nikki. He sees Bear's desperation as a potential obstacle between himself and an easy hookup, and that's enough for him to sabotage any shot Bear would have at a relationship with her. We see this same shallow desire from his wish. Like, seriously, $1 billion? Bro needs to hit the Nicomachean ethics again. Dude don't even know that riches are not the good we seek, only useful for the sake of something else. I know the Continentalists are in vogue, but maybe if Ian put down the Foucault and picked up some Aristotle, Bear wouldn't have ended up killing himself, huh? You ever think of that? In any case, Ian is the devil. Well, okay, that's a bit extreme. However, I do think that if this had all played out in another world without the One Wish Willow, Ian would be by far the most despicable member of the castle's crew. Ian is the person Bear wishes he was. While Bear had to use magic to control Nikki, Ian is constantly using good old-fashioned peer pressure and manipulation to control Bear, Sarah, and Nikki. While assertiveness is awkward for Bear, Ian always gets what he wants. Both are desperate for control, but Ian isn't afraid to take it. He serves as a reminder that manipulation without magic is both possible and common. The horror of this movie isn't the One Wish Willow, because the One Wish Willow is the one element of this movie that doesn't exist in our world. The real horror is how grounded in reality the conflict of obsession is. People like Bear and Ian are common, and worse, it's exceptionally easy to be just like them. Humans naturally crave control, and denying that nature is of vital importance. It's my opinion that the only good control is self-control. In any other form, control is a venomous thing, whether it comes from a magic stick or simply from words and emotions. When trying to play God, it isn't the intention or the method or the outcome that makes it wrong. It's the attempt itself. I've spoken about Ian for long enough, but I'll leave him with one last consideration. If you want to imagine an even more horrific movie than this one, just think, what would Ian have wished for if he had believed that the One Wish Willow worked? Bear's desires may seem to be the best defined in the movie, but I actually think they're the most unstable. It's easy to say that he wants a relationship with Nikki, but that isn't entirely accurate. No, he wants to feel like he's in a relationship with Nikki, even if it isn't real. When a strong desire goes unchecked for too long, it can start to spiral. In Bear's case, he spent so long liking Nikki that when his grandmother died and his world started falling apart, I think he convinced himself that being with her would make life worth living again. He never loved Nikki so much as the idea of her that he conjured up in his mind. Over time, his feelings for Nikki and his desire to stop hurting became indistinguishable. He convinced himself that without her, he would never be happy. When she wasn't around, he thought only of her continuously. He stalked her social media or listened to songs that reminded him of her, and most of all, he waited. As the song goes, however, good things come to those who wait, but not to those who wait too late. When Nikki announced she'd be leaving, Bear didn't see his friend entering a new season of life. Selfishly, he only saw his own life coming to an end. The problem is that Bear has no control over anyone, not even himself. He lets Ian walk all over him. He can't bring himself to share his hurt surrounding Sandy, and he bottles up his pain when Nikki asks him to go to trivia. Those things, I don't blame Bear for. I know lots of people who struggle to stand up for themselves. But it's better to be spineless than heartless. If that was where it had ended, we might have called Bear naive, or emotionally unintelligent, or just stupid. But it wasn't the want of a better life that made Bear evil. It was the wish to take that life from Nikki. Freaky Nikki is Bear without brakes, conjured into being from the darkest parts of his heart. The material of her existence was only ever an extension of Bear's being. That's why, with Sarah's blood all over her hands, Freaky Nikki tells Bear that he wanted all these things to happen. See, I think the One Wish Willow has one last rule. 6. The One Wish Willow gives you what you want, not what you ask for. Bear may have asked for Nikki to love him more than anyone in the entire world, but what he really wanted was for her to feel for him what he felt for her. And he got exactly that. He got a version of Nikki Freeman who would do awful things to be with Bear and Bailey, just as he did awful things to be with her. The One Wish Willow doesn't control Freaky Nikki. Bear does. At the moment the wish was made, the willow looked into his heart and crafted someone just to the specifications of his desire. The willow made her, but Bear's obsession was the mold. A want can be denied, but when desire mutates into obsession, everything, compassion, propriety, morality, becomes means to an end. Obsession demands control, but control is the antithesis of love. Control is impatient and unkind. It is envious, arrogant, resentful, and divisive. It revels in ignorance at any cost to truth and endures only unto the inevitable end of controlled and controller. And control, above all things, yearns incessantly for yet more control. I wonder where Nikki, Sarah, and Ian would have ended up if Bear had just let go. I wish he'd given us the chance to find out. I'm Curmudgeon. Thanks for watching. If you enjoyed this video and would like to support my work for free, check out one of these 2 episodes of Let's Split Up on screen right now. I hope to see you there.